All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the show. We are so happy to have you for another episode of V. Bailey's Ask a Black Woman, brought to you by HBCU Launch Network. And this evening, we're going to touch on the topic of femininity. And so we're super excited. There's been so many questions in regards to femininity and understanding what does that mean? Um, how do you use it? How do you tap into that? And we want to go ahead and dig in this evening to answer your questions. And we have two special guests with us this evening who are the experts. And so we're excited to have them this evening. And I wanted to just welcome you both. We have Laura, and she is masculine, feminine energy and intuition coach. And we also have Miss Rachel Yvonne, who's a biblical, focuses on biblical femininity and divine feminine. And so thank you, ladies, so much for joining us this evening. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
You know what?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm excited to be a part of this conversation tonight.
Yes, yes, yes. I could listen to that accent all day. That's my favorite accent. It's a British accent. So, welcome, welcome. So, Laura, can you tell us a little bit about what you do before we get started?
Yeah. So I am an intuitive coach, and my coaching mostly centers around helping people to balance their internal masculine and feminine energies. But when we're working to balance those internal energies, we play that out in the relationships that we have in our lives. So
Mm,
I'm really a relationship coach because most of my clients come to me and they're working with people who are a representation of their inner feminine or inner masculine, and they're working to figure out how to put the pieces together, figure out any sort of blockages they're having in that connection, and how that relates to what's going on inside of them internally. So I'm all about that internal power that we have, but I understand that it comes, that it's reflected back in our external situations and relationships. So I'm a relationship and purpose coach.
right. Okay. Awesome. Okay. And Miss Rachel Yvonne.
Yes, yes, yes. So I'm a biblical femininity coach. So basically, what that means is that I basically just use the Bible as a foundation for the things that I teach, the things that I share. And what I love about the work that I do is the ability to see women's lives transform from just like the most interesting situations into just living their life the way that they've always designed it to be. And so I've been doing this work for specifically in this niche for about 2 to 3 years, and it was a turning point for me because it came about because my clients are the ones that said to me, "Hey, the reason why we work with you is because of this." And so then I was like, "Oh, okay, so that's interesting." Whereas before I was more of a general spiritual life coach for women. But as I've gone on in the years of my work, I've realized that actually this is my actual specific niche, and how I do my work. So I'm excited to be a part of this conversation and just answer the questions that anyone has as well. So thank you so much for the invitation.
And so we're so happy to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, let's dive on into it because this topic, for me, I thought was extremely important because, of all the questions, right? And being a woman, there's all these different ideas of what does that mean? And, a real woman, you hear that all the time. A real woman or a real man does this, and then the attachments to the roles in, not really being able to understand or identify, that you're not your role. But these traits, what do they mean? And how are you tapping into them? Do you need to tap into them to be whoever you are? Just so many questions, wrapped around this topic. So I wanted to dive into that and go into the first question, which is, what is traditional femininity? How do we define femininity? So, um, Rachel, go ahead and lead us into that, and we can just kind of go back and forth and get your perspectives.
Yeah, sure. So to me, when I think of the word traditional and femininity, so traditional is going to be, when we think of the tradition, it's something that has been passed down, or it's like a particular set of behaviors or customs. And then femininity is feminine energy, feminine essence. It's the traits that we normally associate with women. And so when I think about the idea of traditional femininity, it implies that there is a non-traditional way of doing things. And when I've been able to kind of like do a little bit of research on that particular branch of femininity, is the concept of the idea and the kind of like belief system or the culture values of women being able to have a choice. It's all about the choice that I've realized. It's about the choice of being able to stay at home and not have to work. So traditional femininity, the main kind of sphere or the main thrust of that kind of belief or that kind of concept is that women have a choice to be able to stay at home, whether you have children or not, and to take on that more traditional role at home. So it's very focused on not going out to work, but actually your work is your household, your children, if you have children, or just managing the home. So that's my understanding of traditional femininity.
Okay, so more like of an attachment to the traditional roles that we have, right?
Yeah.
Wife or traditional husband. Okay. And Miss Laura, what is your perspective on the traditional definition of femininity or the definition of femininity?
Yeah, when I think of traditional femininity, I see it the same way. It's the typical kind of the stay-at-home mother, the housewife, the person who's there to take care of the home, to make that energetic space safe, secure, and to, provide nutrition and nurture and care for the household. And that's kind of how we typically see the feminine and where her energy is. And I think there's a lot of value in tradition. But I also think that when we start dissecting femininity, we begin to see that it's so much more complex than that traditional role. And there's so many different layers and there's so much wholeness. And we also have masculine energy inside of us too. So when we balance that out, then the way that traditional feminine looks begins to shift and change, and we see her as this whole complete being instead of this just kind of like singular projection that we've really seen in the depictions in movies and culture and all that. So I do think there is a lot of value in traditional femininity, and that you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I think that there's a lot more to look at when we look at the feminine.
Right. Okay.
You know what? I also want to add just a little bit to what Laura just shared as well about traditional elements. I think as well, when it comes to this, is that I think the main thing that I always think about this is about the choice aspect of that. One thing I found out in my own personal journey is that the modern world, and we'll get into this in one of the further questions down the line, the modern world kind of tells us that if a woman does desire to be at home, that is less than a career woman. And I think one of the things that I love about these conversations is to let women know that we do have a choice, and that being a stay-at-home wife, if that's what you desire to be, isn't less of your fulfilling your purpose than, say, having a successful career outside the home. And so that's the one thing that I wanted to kind of just highlight as we continue this conversation.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we'll dive into that more because that is a question that I keep. And even for myself, I'm not an expert, but just learning, more about it, and hangups that we get, like, oh, well, does that mean that I'm not, as feminine, as this other person, or this other woman because I do things this way, or so thank you. I did do a little research and checking into what they state the traditional feminine is, and I think you guys pretty much touched on it. It's basically talking about the same things that you stated, but they also touch on what is the feminine influence. And it says the feminine influence what does it mean? And this is the feminine the feminine is clothed with strength and dignity. She smiles in the face of diversity. She challenges without losing a friend. Women are in demand. Feminine qualities recognize elements of success are a sought after commodity. And I was like, okay, this is amazing. But the part that stuck out the most for me is the part about she challenges without losing a friend. That was powerful. And I just thought back to just different conversations, with different women, older women, speaking to my mother, and she shared some things with me, about my grandma, and I just think it's amazing the way some of the, women, young and older, they could be able to correct you, or challenge you, in a sense, without offending you. You get what I'm saying? And I think that that's the trouble we face today. You'll hear a lot from, men that I want a woman who's challenging me, right? Which I don't know if that's necessary. It. I think that they have a hard time articulating what it is they're trying to say. They don't want to feel like you're puffing your chest up and you're on the same level as far as with their masculinity, right? But not necessarily not challenging, because when people challenge us, things are challenging, it gives us the opportunity to grow, And so I thought that this was something to look at, because if I'm able to challenge you without losing you as a friend, meaning like, I guess, disrespecting you, or you feel you're disrespected and you don't want to deal with me, if I'm able to do that, then that means we're able to grow, and iron can sharpen iron, right? And so I think that that's important for us to, as women, to be able to learn how to do that. Like, what does that mean? Because if you're not really sure what that means, you may be giving off that, giving off too much masculinity and repelling, the man. And obviously you don't want that if you're trying to have a relationship with a man and marry him. You don't want him to be like, you're more masculine than me, But with us not really understanding how to articulate that, that's why this is very important. So I just wanted to bring that to the topic. So what did you guys think about that? Isn't that something?
Yeah, I think that when we are in our true feminine nature and we are with a partner who matches our frequency, so that means their level of masculinity matches the level of our femininity, we just naturally feel comfort, and you can feel that you can step down and allow the masculine to take leadership. And that doesn't mean that the feminine doesn't have a leadership role, but it's a different way, where I feel that, the masculine really leads in kind of the doing, the logical, the willpower, the physical world sense. And then the feminine leads more in like the spiritual, emotional. And she has a lot of power, but she has to see that her power isn't the same as the masculine's. And when I hear that, I just hear, like tactful, gentle guidance instead of forceful correction or criticism.
Right, definitely. And Rachel, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to like the masculine and feminine energy, it's understanding exactly like Laura said, it's like that. And also what you mentioned as well is this idea of the compatibility. So I find that I thrive much better in my femininity and just in my feminine energy when I'm with, even platonically, when I'm around very strong masculine men. And honestly, that's the kind of friends that I find myself around anyway, because there's something about that polarity that, you end up attracting each other as magnets. And then the men that I date, they're of that, like, super, very strong in their masculine. The more I've noticed this, the more feminine I become, is the more masculine the man is that I attract. And it's about that complementary energy, isn't it? It's about making sure, and even, you know, biblically, the Bible tells us about a woman being an Ezer, which is a helpmeet. And it's the idea of somebody that complements, because when Adam looked around the garden and God saw that he was friends with the cats, he was friends with the dogs, he's going to have horse riding, but it wasn't the same compatibility to making and creating a woman out of his own flesh. So it's like that when you have that friction, it's usually because there isn't that compatibility. We're not in competition with men, we're in compatibility. It's about making sure that we balance each other out, you know, the yin and yang, as it were, and understanding that. But when that phrase of like wanting someone to be a challenge, like you said, I think it needs to be dissected further, because what they mean is someone, you know, what that man probably means is a woman with a mind, a woman with her own brain, but not one who challenges him in a way of like being disrespectful or being rude or being, you know, trying to like overrule his authority, more in a challenge as in, she makes me want to be better. So so we've got to be careful about that language, and dissect that further, because some people are like, yeah, he wants a woman who is argumentative. It's like, no, actually, no, it's probably not going to be that. It's more of you challenge me to be better, rather than challenging his, you know, attributes and so on and so forth.
Yes, yes. Compatibility is key. It's very important. Can't really get too far if you're not, you know, you'll be butting heads all day. So some people think that's cute, but I think it's just they may haven't, you know, matured enough, you know, to understand like this is not sustainable. So, okay, awesome. So, well, that brings us to the next question that there's, you know, been a lot of talk about third wave feminists, right? And I was like, what's that when I first heard it? And people were just talking about it so much, you know, lately, on social media and different podcasts and things. I'm like, what is that? You know, like, what is the third wave, you know? And so, but they've been talking about it in the, you know, in the aspect that it's been destroying Black families and marriages. And there's a lot of confusion between feminist and feminine and femininity, right? And so I think that when they hear the word, I was talking to some guys the other day, and I said femininity or feminine energy. They're like, oh, we talking about that feminist stuff. I'm like, no, it's different, you know? And so I wanted to, you know, touch on that and see if you guys can speak to that and clear up. You know, speak to that and really clear up what is the difference. Explain what's the difference between feminine energy or femininity versus feminist. Go ahead, Laura. I would love to have hear your perspective on this.
Okay, thank you. So when I hear of a feminist, I immediately, my mind goes to dominating the masculine. And, you know, we've got a lot of issues we've got the distorted patriarchy, which I personally talk a lot about, like the toxic patriarchy that we've created that we do need to balance back out as we bring back in the divine feminine energy. But when I hear the term feminist, my mind goes to wanting to come back in and punish, dominate, control, manipulate the masculine, instead of naturally, as you were saying before, inspire the masculine energy to do better just by you doing better. And I think that comes from the feminine having her own masculine energy in balance, because when the feminine has her own masculine energy healed and in balance, she feels safe. She feels secure with herself. She knows her worth. She knows how to set boundaries so she doesn't ever have to feel threatened. So she knows who she is. And when you know who you are and you know your worth, you don't have to go back and attack the masculine energy or the masculine culture or whatever, so to speak. You know, you are able to hold your own, and then you want balance. So I think that a feminist is more of someone who kind of wants to some sort of quick fix, Whereas femininity is more about taking that lead in the spiritual and the emotional, fixing yourself first, healing your inner wounds, being the best version of yourself, and then naturally inspiring the masculine that way and taking the lead that way to balance things back out, instead of coming in with this kind of external approach, this very like harsh approach, because you can't really change anyone. So that whole movement of just like, if we make these laws or these rules or this, then the whole masculine culture will change. There's no way to really do that. That's just enforcing this false sense of security. So the security of your own worth and knowing your worth as a feminine has to come from you first. And then that natural feminine energy just comes in and authentically balances out and brings that union between the masculine and the feminine.
Okay, that sounds good.
I love that, Laura. That was amazing. I love that answer of the differences between femininity and feminist, because a lot of people, just like when you did speak to your friends and then they said that, oh, is that, is when people misunderstand, they think they're the same thing, femininity and feminist. But in actual fact, I think the original idea of feminism was a really great idea. So the ideal of feminism is to help with men and women having equal treatment. The only problem with that is that, unfortunately, men and women, we're actually different. So I don't thrive by being treated the same as a man. Like, if you see me carrying something, I need help. So come and carry it for me. So that's it's about that, the ability that we have as men and women. We are different. We have different ways of behaving, different ways of living life, etc., and they are complementary. But I think that the main issue I have with feminism is the idea of this equality, whereas we should be striving more for equity. So when we look at what that looks like, so equality is everyone being treated the same, and then equity means that we're all provided for differently in ways that make us flourish, but we have equal opportunity to be put in environments that help us to flourish. So, for example, that could look like, so being treated exactly the same would be something like when it's our time of the month, for example, for women, like whenever we're on our periods, and you not having any compassion for that because you need to suck it up and you need to just get on with life. But equity would look like, hey, I know it's your time of the month coming. I'm aware of your emotions. I'm aware of how you feel, and positioning you to thrive by providing, Tylenol, by giving you some warm heating pads, rather than saying you get to just survive the way everybody else does, because we both need different things in order to thrive and survive. And so when I think about femininity as a polar, I don't think it's an opposite to feminism. I just think there are some overlaps, because I think the ideal design of feminism was great. Like, I think that, like I always put it this way, that the only reason why we even have a feminist movement is because, unfortunately, men and women have not been in their rightful places as to how they were created. And if we were in our divinely ordained places, just like Laura was explaining, we wouldn't have a need of a feminist movement, but we do need it because exactly. I just have some issues around the movement when it looks as though we are trying to remove the need or the love for men in our lives. It can come across a little bit like we're trying to take their place, when there's no need for that. We just need to know our place, let them know their place, and then we should be able to work cohesively as men and women together.
Definitely. Just appreciating that, because both, bring the masculine energy, the feminine energy. It brings so much, value to relationships, to families. And so I love the way that you both put that. And then even that, the equity, striving towards equity versus equality. I like that. I'm going to have to do my research and, so I can speak to that more. So thank you so much for that. That's beautiful. So hopefully that clears some things up. Let me see. Oh, okay, never thought about it. Oh, equality versus equity. See? So hopefully we're uh, inspiring some healthy conversations. We need more of those, especially on Clubhouse.
Yes.
So what was that?
I just said yes, yes.
It gets vicious sometimes on some of those
Oh my gosh, yes.
conversations. Uh,
Sometimes I don't even, people will ping me or they'll DM me on Instagram. They'll be like, hey, we're having this conversation. And I look at the title, I will go in the room for like a second. And then I'm just like, yeah, today's not the day.
right.
Because I feel as though as well, back to what we said at the top of the show, it's a choice. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to make you believe that me being a homemaker or me desiring whatever I desire in my life, I'm not going to try and convince you of that. That's something that you need to be convinced of your own self. So yeah, like there's no need for the arguing. It's literally, we all as women, as adults, we get to make choices. Thankfully, in the countries that we live in, we're able to have those choices. And so I take my responsibility of choice, you know, really, I take it as a privilege. And so I also take my choice not to argue with you about it if you disagree. So yeah, it's interesting.
Sure. I mean, that's a level of maturity getting to that point that you understand that. Because, I think before when you're younger and not as mature, then you feel the need to go back and forth. Like, no, I have to tell you, like, this is the right way. Da, 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 da. But like, if a person is not there, they're not going to be able to receive. Okay, the saying here. Okay, it's a little. We'll have to go back to that with the question. But if they're not ready, to receive it or they're not at that place, then you're just going to be like, womp, womp, womp. It's going to go in one ear and out the other. And, that means it's not the time, it's not, we can't have an effective conversation with you. But I have realized where there's a lot of hurt and pain and some, conversations when, men are like, okay, well, they don't really appreciate that. It's because they hadn't experienced it. And even some women, you'll hear them, you can hear the pain there because they didn't experience it. They didn't come up with a mother who was, feminine, they came up with something different, or maybe a mother that was absent. And so they didn't really gain, that appreciation because they never had it. And I think that's something too that we do in general when you never had something or you're missing something. The pain of it is so great that you start to lie to yourself and tell yourself, oh, I don't need that, or I don't need a man. I don't need this. I don't need you to do this to me. I don't need you to protect me. And it's just like, yeah, you maybe don't need it necessarily, but you would prefer it, because it would be more helpful for you to thrive, and when you're so used to trying to survive, you don't know, like, thriving is not even doesn't even come into your mind coming across your mind because you believe you can't have it because you've never experienced it, right? And so that's important, is to kind of have that topic. And sometimes I'll jump into a room if I feel like I can bring, a feminine perspective and kind of paint you a picture like this is possible. You may have not experienced in your life or may have not been around it, but it's possible, because, I'm that way. There's several other people, women who are in here who are that way, and so just allow yourself to, experience it, so. Welcome, everyone that's coming in still. Okay, so next, I want to talk about what, is the power of femininity and how it affects relationships and why it's so important. Is it necessary? We all know it's necessary, but I'll let you guys, answer that. Why is it, important? What's the power of femininity? Miss Rachel.
I think for me, when I think about the power of femininity, it's about the power of your identity. So for me, when I understand it, I feel like there's nothing more powerful and nothing that can stop a woman who knows who she is. So for me, the power is not necessarily in femininity of itself, but I think it's more of the power of your identity. And so as women, understanding that we lead with our feminine, and we do have masculine, obviously, that's, you know, if you're 100% feminine, that doesn't make sense. That wouldn't even be, you wouldn't be able to do many things with your life if you're all feminine. We are all both. And I think the power of it as a woman is understanding that balance and what that balance looks like for you. Because how I live my life as a feminine woman might be different to how you live your life. You know,
Right.
I've got some clients who have no desire to leave their job, but they just wanted to learn more about how to have more of the energy when they're at home, etc. And that works for them. And I've got other clients who are fully stay at home, you know, very traditional, on the very traditional spectrum. And then there are more people who are, you know, still, you know, of different lifestyles. So it's about the power of it is in your ability to manage yourself. When you're able to manage your emotions as a feminine woman, you're able to, you know, be, there's so many different things. And I'd love to hear what Laura has to say about this also. But it's that, for me, it's that power in knowing who you are. And that's the main thing that I think about. It's not femininity in itself, because that's just a part of who we are, but it's the power of your identity and knowing that your femininity is not weakness. It's not something that should be squashed. It's not something that makes you less than a woman. And those are, you know, because we were talking about feminism earlier, and of course the idea of feminism culture and some of the elements of feminism have become normal culture. So that's why we're probably having this conversation, because the power of femininity can be seen as something negative because of what's commonly spoken about, you know, around in the world.
Right. Or weakness, and it's quite the opposite. It's powerful, and I think that too with feminism, it kind of strays away from that, the beauty and the power of femininity. You know, it's like it's not this beautiful, powerful thing that's able to transcend, you know, a message or to help heal and provide something, you know, special, you know, to the family, yourself, you know, to others that are in the community. So, yes, definitely. What is your take on that?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. That was a beautiful explanation. I really think it's so important to know who we are. And that's for men, women, you know, everyone. Knowing who you are is how you are able to understand your worth. And when you understand your worth and your value, you then become a very powerful person, whether you are a masculine or a feminine. And for me, you know, the feminine energy it can be expressed in so many different ways. And just like Rachel was saying, that she's got clients who some want to be a stay-at-home mom or a homemaker, and some want to go out and thrive in the corporate world or the business world. There's so many different ways for the feminine to be expressed. But I think when I think of feminine power, I think about her ability to flow. The feminine is very fluid. So she can adjust to situations. She's adaptable. She can shift the energy. So if the energy is getting stuck, like if we're stuck in our masculine energy and it's getting like stagnant and things aren't changing, the feminine can come in and help to shift the whole energy in a room, in her home, in the office, wherever she is, right? It could be expressed in so many different ways. The feminine also has this ability to connect to creativity and spirituality. So she can get information that you may not be able to just find in a book, or it's not the traditional way that things have been done. And this can be, you can use this, and I know my own personal journey, I've been a homeschooling mom, I've worked in an office, I've run my own business. There's so many different ways I've existed as a feminine in the world, right? But it really comes down to this ability to adapt to situations, to be able to get creative inspiration that doesn't come from something that someone else has done before, right? I can tap into that, to source, to God, to whatever you want to call it, the higher power, and get some information and pull that down. That's really a feminine quality. That's very much feminine energy. So this is very powerful. And this is something that we need more of right now. in society, because when we kind of get stuck in these loops of repeating things the same way, and I'm not saying that traditions are bad, but when we, keep trying to solve problems from the same place that we were at,
Right.
that's when that feminine energy can come in with some creativity and just kind of shift everything and move things along, because masculine is all about doing, and kind of seeing what's right in front. Because when I go into my masculine energy, I'm very task oriented. I'm like, this is what I need to do. This is right in front of me. And when I go into my feminine energy, I can see the big picture. I can see all of these different timelines and ways that things can go. So that's what's really powerful about the feminine to me.
Yeah, because you're tapping into, it's kind of, you're going into spirit, more so. And I think sometimes, when you're not, you're limited, because you're coming from it from a more, I guess, tangible or more physical, um, way, versus being able to kind of come outside of that tap in, and take it to the spirit. There's only so far you can go, um, so I think that that's very important, is understanding that, being able to tap into that divine to spirit, Um, okay, and so there are also a lot of misconceptions and stereotypes. Out there also was a question, someone was referring it to what Miss Rachel Yvonne said. So I'm going to read it really quick here before we go into that last question. It says, wow, this convo is a huge step backwards right up front. Okay. I'm a breadwinner and I don't need a man carrying my bags or noticing my time of the month. I need a man recognizing my worth, homemade meals and bills paid. Why can't I do everything without it being a threat to masculinity? Well, you know what? That I think is a good question, and for women who are, breadwinners or boss women, they're, creating businesses and they're traveling and they love the life of, the hustle and bustle and, creating and just being, a leader, in their world. Um, I guess the question is kind of like, can they do both, um, and we'll touch on what this person is asking. Um, and then I kind of, give, I guess, my perspective of the things sometimes that I've struggled with, like, can you be a boss and can you be, a mom and a wife, and can you do it all, basically? So, Rachel, we'll let you answer that or speak to that, since it was directed to you.
Yeah, sure. I think that when I gave those examples, those were just a couple of examples, of course. Like this is a microcosm of the world of femininity, and so there's no way that we can give you like 50,000 different examples in this short conversation. So first of all, those were just examples that I used, just random examples of things that women deal with.
Right.
Men do not have periods. So me talking about a period is something that is specific to us as women.
Right.
So that's why I use that example. And I think that we can do, listen, here's the thing. We can have, be, and do whatever we desire. You just need to make sure it is what you really desire. So I noticed that if once we understand what works for us, then we must go with that. So if being, if we're saying that we don't need a man for ABC, but we need them for DEF, we need to make sure that those men that can supply DEF are also attracted to us as well. So it's a two-way street. And so I would say that it can sound as though we're going backwards, but it's only backwards when you don't consider that we all have choices, which we talked about at the top of the beginning of this conversation, is that women do have choices how we like to live our lifestyle. And this goes again to what we were saying earlier about the common misconceptions of femininity, which is the same question that we're actually answering anyway. And it's not necessarily a threat to masculinity to do certain things, but it's more about, is this what I really want? So if you desire to be the breadwinner and you desire to be in other certain roles that we have specifically said tend to be more feminine, that's just a definition. It's not the gospel. And so I don't necessarily see things as forwards or backwards, but more of what I want. So if you're saying that you disagree with the things that we're sharing, absolutely, that's always going to be okay, as long as it's making you happy. My question is always, what are your results saying? So if how we live our lives is bringing us the results that we desire, then by all means, carry on. But if there is room for improvement or room for change, or a feminine trait is to always be teachable, always be coachable. So I'm always looking for feedback of like, hey, this isn't working, so where can I tweak? And that's really all we're offering here. Maybe a couple of personal tweaks or things like that. But I don't think anything that we do can ever be a threat to a true masculine man. It's all about deciding what works for us. And even as it relates to your question, V, about being a boss and so on and so forth, I run my own business. I've been in full-time ministry since I was 17 years old, and I've always done something entrepreneurial. And I think that the difference is that when I speak to women who earn multiple six figures and so on, what I find is that because they tend to be more in their masculine energy, there tends to be a lot more burnout, a lot more tiredness. And then by the end of the day, they realize that, oh, I'm still single. And so then they're now looking back and seeing where in their life have they missed out on, not being in their feminine energy. And that's the only issue I have with women who tend to be like, go, 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 is that where have you allowed yourself space to breathe so you can be in touch with your true desires, which is something that Laura was talking about earlier, about making sure that we're, with our femininity and our energy. Those type of women tend not to be great at self-care, tend not to be great at having quiet time. And that's in my experience of working with like women who earn a lot of money, is that it goes to show that our natural way of being, we thrive better in those situations. And you can take that comment however you like, but that's just been my experience.
Right. And it's not just for this person, right? Like, obviously, you want, a partner. So you do need to be mindful of that, we all have choices. And so if you make a bunch of choices that, are not desirable, for this other person, not saying to change yourself, because I believe there's someone for everyone, but, are you being honest, and true to you, right? But that feminine energy, it's not just for this other person, for the opposite sex, it's for you as well. Because just like I stated, when you're getting burnt out and all these things, you don't have time to be who it is that you were, designed to be before you learned everything,
One more thing. One more thing, V, around this, because sometimes people say, and I noticed that Stacey also talked about being a widow before she was a widow, etc. And I think that what I found as well that really helps me is that even though the way that money comes to me comes in different ways, my wording around it has changed as well. So I don't call myself a boss babe, boss. First of all, I don't use those languages for me personally, because I'm only talking about what works. So I can just give advice based on what I know works for me. So I tend not to describe myself in certain terminologies, because our words have power. The only boss that I would like in my life is God. So that's it. And so I know it can seem frivolous, but for me, I can say that this is powerful. And the other thing is that I did a post on Instagram some months ago where I said that I am not the breadwinner, God is. And I am not the provider, God is. And that will only change. So then my mindset around it is, even though I am, my new way of saying it is in between marriages, even though I'm in between marriages right now, my concept around it is that I am not the breadwinner. So my business or books that I sell are just one way that money comes to me, because I make an exchange of goods and services for finances. However, I'm not the breadwinner and I am not the provider, because my mentality, that's how that's why women sometimes find it hard to shift when they do get married or have a boyfriend who's like very much into providing and so on and so forth. They find it hard to transition. It's because of your mindset around money and
Right.
around what a provider looks like. So because I constantly have that in my mind, it's shifted me regardless of my romantic status. People will always be like, oh, you're so feminine, you're able to receive, because of the mindset. I don't
Right.
see myself that way at all.
Because you
And
stay in that mindset
right,
with
right.
you know what's going on outside. You stay within. You stay in that mindset of being, you know, having some humility, right, and being feminine, understanding, you know, submission, and understanding, being in that place of gratitude that it's not coming, you know, always for you like, oh yeah, well, I created this, you know, because when you start getting puffed up that way, you start, you know, projecting and putting that on other people, like, you know, really getting puffed up and feeling like, oh, I made you because I added this to you. No, you didn't. This is all a luxury. You know what I mean? Like it's a luxury that you're able to do what you do every day. Like every day we have to be grateful because you could wake up tomorrow and not be able to move. You know, you can wake up tomorrow and lose everything. You know, so when you stay in that mindset of, you know, of being humble, you know, and being grateful and having gratitude for life, you know, just everything, you know, not for a person like they saved you from poverty or from, you know, always make this comment that some of these guys, you know, want you to, you know, come across that they saved you they found you in a shipping container, you know, and they just realize like, no, like be able to respect me and I'm going to be able to respect you because I appreciate what you're doing, what value you're bringing to me. And you should appreciate the value that I'm bringing to you. It's an exchange, you know, here. But when you have that mindset, you stay in that mindset of appreciation and gratitude, then it's not difficult when you get married to someone, or when you have to share your life with someone, you have to build with someone, or when you have to work on a project or work on, you know, something together and partner with someone. You're not stuck in the ego, you know, you're not feeling yourself, you know. And so I do believe that you can have it all. I think that whatever it is that you desire, you first need to be true to yourself and be honest of who you are, transparent, and be vulnerable enough to share, you know, with the areas that you can improve, and connect with someone who can help you in those areas. Because you know, beautiful ladies, I found you guys on Clubhouse, and it was from me listening to the way that you spoke and the value that you were providing, and you know, your perspective on things. And I felt like that's very valuable, you know, to me, you know, to other women and to men, you know, because they may think that you're unicorns, that women like us don't exist. So I was just like, well, let's see, you know, let's put it out there so people know this is, it's real. So thank you. Laura, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that, as far as with the perspective what the young lady was speaking about, I guess, wanting to be, you know, breadwinner, provider, but also I guess being valued, being seen. Is that what she said? Hold on. Basically, okay, why can't I be everything without being a sex masculinity? And I guess that part's kind of broad.
Yeah.
I guess that part's kind of broad.
I understand the comment. You know, from my, and I really understand what Rachel was saying and explaining too, that it has to come down. And I think Rachel was saying this in the beginning, a choice, that we have a choice, right? How we want to express this feminine energy. So that's so important. With that said, my own way that I go about coaching is all about inner union. And I think that this is what Rachel was explaining, is that when you are, you know, secure in yourself, when you have this inner union between your inner masculine and feminine energy, even if you're predominantly an expression of the feminine, you are able to then hold space for masculine energy without needing it. So You don't need a partner. You don't need someone to come in and provide for you and take care of you, but you're open to it. And as your masculine energy matures and your feminine energy matures, what usually happens is you then draw in, you begin to bring in partners who then match that same level of frequency that you have within yourself. So if your inner feminine is healthy, you're going to bring in a healthy masculine who wants to help you, who wants to protect you and provide for you. Not that you need it, you're already doing that for yourself because you already have that inside of you, you already have this healthy relationship with yourself. So I think that when we realize that we really are sovereign, and that, you know, even the experiences that come into our lives, you know, with like our businesses, how we make our money, everything that comes to us. And you were saying this so nicely. It's like we could wake up one day and not be able to do anything. You could, you know, you could go through an accident or anything like that. So we have to understand that we really are relying on each other.
Right.
We really are, you know, we are not just completely separate and individuals. Like there's a lot of help that we get from others in order to survive. And if it's not from family, then often it's from like government or, you know, all these other different situations. But we're sovereign in our energy, but we work together. And that's just kind of how things are set up. You know, it would be so hard to just survive on your own completely with no help at all. You know, like no one to help you babysit you. I know I've got 2 young kids. I went through grad school with them. Like I needed some help, you know. Right. So even if I'm strong in my masculine energy, I still then want to pull in healthy examples, healthy reflections of my own inner strength to come in and offer some assistance, because I know that I thrive best with help, with cooperation with others.
Right.
And that's why, you know, this lockdown and all the isolation has been so hard for so many people, because we really do better in, you know, working together and collaborating. So it doesn't have to be a man that comes in. It could be, you know, your best girlfriend, you know, it could be someone, it could be your sister, it could be a male friend, you know. But I think we have to, part of being strong in your feminine is being open to receive and being open to assistance and help.
Right, because you're designed that way, honestly. It's kind of like when we go against it, we run the risk of causing, you know, ailments, you know, to our body, because we're out of whack. We're not, you know, balanced. And so anytime you're not balanced, it causes chaos, right? And so it's causing chaos within the body, you know, and we know that's no good. So Rachel, Yvonne, she had to, you know, leave. And so she dipped out. But we thank her so much for joining us. I was going to ask you if women would like to learn more about how to tap in, you know, if you can give, you know, maybe a couple of tips on how to tap in to that, you know, divine feminine. You know, they may have grew up with just their dad, right? You know, and 4 brothers. And so they may find like, well, am I, you know, like feminine, you know? And I believe it's within. You may just not know how to tap into it because you feel like you know, you might be a little bit more rough because you know, wrestled with your brothers and, you know, hung out with your dad and work on cars and things like that. And so maybe that's something that we can kind of talk about, I guess, tapping into that feminine. If you feel like, am I feminine? And, you know, how do I tap into that?
Yeah. I just, you know, Stacy's comment below,
No.
that we saw it, I just wanted to make sure that we got a chance to respond to that too. So, yeah.
Definitely.
First, I just wanted to say I did want to respond, to Stacy.
Okay, go ahead and respond to her, because it's not.
Lori, you read me like a book. I resist help even though I know it takes a village. That is one of the main, in the question that you asked, it aligns perfectly here, because when I'm working with clients, and this could be men or women, and I'm helping them to strengthen their masculine energy, again, it's opening to receiving. And I'm coming from a place where I had a hard time with that. And then I dealt with illnesses. I dealt with physical burnout because I didn't open up to receive help. I still struggle with it. It's something that I work on every single day, even though I help clients with it. I'm also still working on becoming a stronger, conscious person, being, soul, on this physical plane, and knowing myself. The work never stops. So opening up to help is one way that we can strengthen our feminine energy. Opening up to receiving, believing that not only people, but situations can come into our lives. And that's when we kind of get into this whole idea of manifestation. And, although I don't completely align with that term, I do believe that we create our reality. We're co-creators with source, spirit, God, whatever you want to call the higher power, right?
Mhm.
So if you feel and you believe and you feel that your inner masculine is strong and that you have this kind of sense of protection within you that you've cultivated inside of you, then your feminine energy then is allowed to relax. And she can go into the state of just kind of, even your physical body will relax, and you can go into the state of openness and be open to any sort of assistance in any sort of way, whether it comes from a man or a woman or a job offer or just like a little extra help here or there. Like, things will come to you if you believe and you trust that you are safe and protected. I really just see it as a law of the universe, right? And that's one of the things. It's like when you're within your feminine energy, you can get into that receptive state. Um, yeah. Another way that I think you can really strengthen your feminine energy is getting into that creative space. And that this is kind of what I teach with my children too, because I homeschool my own kids, and they're both boys, but I help them to get, really strong internal feminine energy. And that by, okay, I'm just
just skimming over because
we'll keep going and we'll go. Yeah. And that's by getting into this place where you can be bored, where it's because our culture is so masculine, right? That we're always doing. We always have this list of things that we have to go through. And the feminine energy, and Rachel was talking about this, can relax, can rest. And, like with my boys, I'm always just like, when they're getting bored, I'm saying, it's okay for you to be bored. It's okay for you to just take a rest, be in your feminine energy just for a little bit, and then allow creative ideas to come to you so that you can get into this flow, into this inspiration. So I think that's another way. And that's something that I work with clients with a lot, is allowing themselves to rest. That's a really great way to strengthen your feminine energy. And it's so hard. It's so much easier said than done. So again, I've been talking about, with the lockdowns and everything, I felt like that was such a great opportunity for us to get in touch with our feminine.
Right.
Because the world had to slow down.
Right. Meditation and tapping in. That's so true. So true. We have to do it. I mean, if you want, honestly, to have, to be fully balanced, and I think that that's what we all yearn for, is to be balanced and centered. And so it's critical, ladies. We all want it. You might be scared or not, or maybe feeling too like, in the ego to admit it. But yeah, we got to start somewhere. But I wanted to, did you get to see what the question was there? There it goes. Okay. It's so little. Okay, I love letting a man lead and provide, or be a provider. Okay. But I always attract just the opposite. I always attract men that don't believe in being a provider, and that forces me to be more masculine and lead. I would love to be able to be more feminine, just don't know how to attract type of man. Oh, sister. That's a lot of women's, struggle, just because of kind of being forced into that role, of being the provider. Because, I mean, we're getting married much later, these days. And so if you're getting married later, you still need to, provide for yourself. You either go, once you leave your parents' home and you get to working and going to school and things like that, you got to do what you got to do. So, yeah, I mean, as far as attracting that type of man. I think we touched on that though. I don't know for sure if that was necessarily a question, but we touched on that a lot when we talked about being more feminine and attracting, the more you're within your feminine, you're more attractive and desirable, for the masculine. But I believe it's more so about, if you're doing that already, putting yourself out there and, being open, like you stated, being open. And sometimes we're not open, like for me, I'm a Cancer, and some people, they don't want to, hear about the signs and things like that. But for me, sometimes if I get scared or don't feel necessarily safe, I kind of go back into the shell. And it's weird because people wouldn't believe it when they, meet me and know my personality. And it's just like, well, I'm comfortable, and, being myself. But when I feel like, this is not safe, something's not right about this energy, then I go, within. So that openness, it's not always there. I'm willing to lean on you and to be there and things like that. But as far as being open, I would say that that's something that I have to work on, is being more open, and that's something that, at times can push them away, because it's weird, because sometimes I feel like, ooh, I'm just in my feminine, like I got the sauce right now, like I'll go out I'm just attracting these men, and I'm like, what did I do today differently than I did last week, and I may just be, really open. And I learned that that's what it was, that I was more open. But I'm not, my head about other things, then it's kind of like, men will be attracted because they're like, oh, she's, pretty, but I might attract the wrong kind,
Right.
Everyone's to the lack. So
right.
you're able to weed it out, and things like that. But did you have something that you wanted to add to that before we wrap it up?
Yes, definitely. So again, the inner union. So I feel that, so we've got our inner masculine energy, right? That sets the boundaries. So, and I usually tell clients, you need to know what you want, what you need in a man, because for so long, the feminine has been programmed to chase and to want to be picked and to desire to be the one picked, right? So we're trying to flip the script right now, So we're trying to get the feminine to a place where she's open to receive, and then she picks, right? Like who is aligned with her. So it's more of a mutual agreement instead of chasing the man. So that's one thing that often comes up with clients. Another thing is that, again, those boundaries, right? So when someone comes in that does not match the frequency that you feel that you're at, if they're not able to provide those needs that you have for yourself, the standards that you've created for yourself internally, then you have to know to set that boundary and to walk away. But then on top of that is what you were talking about, is, having the openness at the same time. So it really takes this mastery of self to have the boundaries, to not allow someone in that's going to hurt you or take advantage of you or is not an equal to you. And then to also stay open. That's so hard to do, because we either, sometimes we just want to just close down completely, and then we just open up completely. And then those are kind of both can end up in sticky situations, right? So you want the in between, where you are logical about this. So when someone comes in, your heart is open, but you kind of have like this list in your head of all of these requirements that you have, and you want them to show. And I tell clients this all the time, with actions, not words, because when masculinity is in its distorted stage, he can say a lot of things, but then not actually follow through. So it's so important as a woman or a feminine that you are able to have that discernment within you to assess the situation, and to also keep your heart open and not project past pains and hurt. And I know that's something that I work on a lot. And it's not even just like relationships, it's just masculine in general, just healing from like the patriarchy and everything, healing from a lot of that pain that we've dealt with. Maybe it was a father figure or brother or people in school or past relationships, but healing that hurt, so that you don't close down, so that you don't clench up, because it's so easy to go there as soon as you see just like a little bit of a red flag. And we also have to get to this point where we can give people the grace. And that's when you When you're secure and you know yourself, you can give people the grace to see that if they can change. Because a lot of times a strong feminine will encourage a masculine to shift and change. And if you're masculine, your own inner masculine energy is strong, then you can hold space for that shift and change. But you also won't entertain anything that's going to cause harm to you.
Right, like that what the young lady was stating about attracting these guys who don't want to provide. That's a man who has not embraced his masculinity fully in his role, and it, a lot of times it may be because he never had that. Like I spoke about earlier, is about, you know, some people who are rejecting it is because they've never seen it, they've never experienced it, so they don't understand or appreciate that, you know, the power of that. He's not appreciating his own power, and so, and he does it, he's not confident within himself that he can achieve it. So it's not, a lot of times it's not that he doesn't want to provide for you, you know, because men know, I mean, it's attached a lot to do with men, you know, it's attached with their work, you know, and it defines who they are, is their work, you know, are they able to provide? And so when you're like, oh, I might not be able to do that, instead of dealing with the pain that I might not be able to do that, and you know, they're going to look at me like there's less of the man, this and that, you make up this story in your mind that, oh, I don't have to do that. You know, maybe you need to step it up. Maybe you're being a gold digger, and they project and put all these other things off on you. And it's just like, no, babe, you are rejecting the natural divine order. And it's okay if you don't know how to do it. It's okay if you feel like you're not in the position to do it. But at that point, once you realize, okay, you know, you to transparent with yourself, you can go and reach out and get help and say, let me, you know, just like how you're doing, you know, femininity and masculinity coach or intuition, they can go see someone like you and get some guidance on that. You know, you're not defined by your childhood or defined by, you know, how it is that you were raised or being a product of your environment. That's there, and it's really there to guide you and to help shape you so that you can use that and be stronger, you know, and be more of the person that you're supposed to be. It's actually, you know, it's a tool. It's, you know, an extra textbook, you know, a resource, and then you just do the work. You have to tap in, and so you were stating something about that, but I think as well, for you to fully do that, you have to heal, you know. If you notice, okay, there's an area where I'm kind of blocked here, okay, actually heal. What does healing look like? Doing your self-healing, the areas that you're struggling, where you know, you find like, okay, I'm hitting a brick wall. Like, why hitting a brick wall? Like, not done yet, you know, so I know that there's more, you know, for me to do. I'm, you know, not the best version of myself, you know. I've not been able to tap in. So how do I do it? You know, who can help me? And there's plenty of people that help, you know, so I just wanted to kind of state that. But I thought this was such a great show, and I appreciate you, Laura, and Rachel Yvonne. That's my name actually. My whole name is Yvonne, and so every time I look at, it's weird to read, you know, your name. But every time I see it pop up. But yeah, I appreciate you so much. And if you could just tell us how to get in contact with you. Let me see. Oh, she said didn't appreciate my own value. Yes. So we have to do that. Appreciate your own value. Do the work, you know, talk to someone. It's not always you got to go to a therapist, you know. There, you know, you can sometimes you can use just wise people in your life, you know, to pour into you and to help you heal in certain areas. Thanks, Rod. The show. And so, and there's people out there. There's some people feel alone and they're like, well, how do I do that? You know, I always say go within, you know, and speak to whoever it is that you believe in, whoever it is that you feel that you're connected to just tap in, God, you know, the universe, the divine source, you know, and just ask for that guidance and just send my tribe, you know. And I have asked that question and it's happened, you know. I'll find myself connecting with someone who's just like, oh my gosh, it's like we have the same mind, you know, or, you know, or you just gave me the answer that I've been looking for, so long. And that's how things will just fall into place. And so just reach out to resources. So how can we find you?
Thanks for asking. So I have a website, thewokenmind.com. So you can find me on there, and more about what I do, and my services are on there as well. I also am very active on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is @Laura, the Woken Mind. I post on there about 6 days a week. I have a collective update that I do on energy between masculine and feminine, the masculine and feminine energy rather. And then I also just offer advice on how to work on strengthening these energies and doing the inner work and the healing that you were talking about. That's just so necessary, because we all are interconnected, and everyone that we pull into our life is somehow reflecting back something to us, something that we need to move on from, something that we need to learn, or something that we need to open ourselves to. And when we have that inner discernment, we can see, what that relationship is then showing us. So thank you so much for having me. This was a wonderful discussion.
Oh, I appreciate it. And I believe that, this evening, the show, we were able to just really, you guys were able to really pour into a lot of people, who are watching, and just, answer some questions. And I hope that, people who are watching, they want to learn more about what it is that you do, or need help, some guidance, they can reach out to yourself and Rachel Yvonne. And Rachel Yvonne's Instagram is @Rachel Yvonne. And what I'll do is, like always, I will post your contact information. So if you can send that to me, anything that you would like to share for people to get in contact with you, your services, and I will be able to post that underneath the video, which will be posted at HBCU Lounge Network, as well as Virtual First Dates YouTube page. Okay, and then you can share it with a loved one, or share it with someone who needs to hear it, or would like to just listen more and learn something new about femininity and themselves. So we thank you so much for joining us, and all the viewers, we thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time on Ask a Black Woman. Have a great night.